Kumara, ou bien should I go first?
I mean, right now I'm brainstorming on it as we go. So
Yeah.
the first thing I would say is like the main like principal measure that the government is taking is lockdown. Like they started the lockdown right from the start, and then throughout they extended it. So I think that's the main measure would be lockdown, and the interesting part to expand on is the extension.
Ok.
So that would be
Donc,
one.
définitivement, j'aurais mentionné que un des premiers paragraphes qui les élèves écrire, c'est que the Mauritian government committed to a lockdown. Donc, définitivement, je mets ça comment dans le topic sentence, dans le premier paragraphe, comme de thèse, comme quoi c'était une mesure que le gouvernement prend. More than happy, good idea. Maintenant, je vais pour développer ça comme un exemple. Comment est-ce que exactement je fais ça? OK? Compare ça. C'est des élèves qui peuvent juste dire que, OK, the Mauritian government, ils mettent un lockdown depuis, je pense, le 20 mars, une affaire comme ça. Et qu'il y a d'autres élèves qui pas seulement disent ça, mais aussi disent un truc comme after consideration ou after assessment of what other leading nations in the world have been doing, le gouvernement a déclaré à travers the government gazette qu'ils ont pu faire ça, qu'ils ont pris sa mesure-là. And it was something that was immediately broadcast par tel media houses, this and that. Donc, ce que je veux dire, c'est que je suis capable de mentionner un point, mais si je te quote the source of the point, je suis capable de quote duration de comment ça peut arriver. It gives so much more substance and credibility to the point that you're mentioning. OK? Donc, je pense que c'est super important. Je pense que c'est une affaire qui, hier, quand je fais une conversation avec trois élèves, je dois capter ça bien. It's very easy to just say, comme dire, OK, in a lockdown by the government, but quoting what encouraged that decision by the government and saying that it was published in a government gazette, it was then declared in a press conference by le Premier ministre, etc. It gives so much more substance to the point in itself. And deuxième affaire, c'est coming to the action verb, comme on m'a clarifié avec eux, de dire quand même assess ça. Was it really logical for the government to inspire itself from nations taking a lockdown and do this? OK? Je connais qu'il paraît super logique, OK, it was just a moral thing to do. But the question demande assess. So I expect you, in the same paragraph, to give me an opinion. Are you agreeable with it? Pas oublier que récemment, une semaine de cela, en Amérique, je ne sais pas exactement qui c'était, but there were people protesting against the lockdown. They were calling out upon their freedom of expression, their freedom of economic empowerment, and people were actually rallying against the lockdown. Donc, en tant qu'un humain qui me peut développer un paragraphe à ce là, if I can probably use that point as probably, no, the government was not right in putting the lockdown. Or perhaps I can use that same example, that concrete example of people rallying against the decision in the US. I can say that it is actually foolish to do that because in any case, they are exhibitioning themselves to more potential of contracting the disease, right? Et là, il finit par solidifier mon point qui, I am agreeable with the fact that there had to be a lockdown and I am assessing that this measure taken is good or bad. Donc, je pensais que c'est ça langue-là, vraiment, qu'on peut redire dans un paragraphe, qui, je mentionne un point, mais mentionner ce point, ce source, is from where, quand je vais mentionner l'exemple-là, et aussi faire de sorte que c'est capable de servir une actualité qui va passer pour soutenir ce même point. Donc, j'espère que ça clarifie un paragraphe. Si nous apprenons un deuxième exemple, peut-être, nous allons prendre un deuxième exemple pour Mera, un deuxième point of the measure taken by the government.
Juste un point previous là, nous allons montrer un exemple de exactement comment je trouve une chose parce qu'il y a une chose assessing it with respect to like what's happening in the world, like the US and stuff. So what we can do is like we can just Google like effect of lockdown lockdown on the curve, on like the pandemic curve, and you actually see like the lockdown actually has an effect that it like
flattening the curve.
Yeah.
Exact.
So,
donc, par exemple, voilà justement, exactement, like very beautifully put. Donc, un exemple qui est capable de US rally, vous êtes supposed d'argument, and déjà un exemple qui est actually capable de flattening the curve effect, qui, it's very easy that you see le social media, ça me trouve ça meme là partout qui help us flatten the curve. It was like mandated by the NHS, which is the National Health Care de UK. Donc, un deuxième exemple. En même temps que je vais caméra, ça me fait penser à une troisième affaire capable. Si je connais une génération super Gen Z, donc peut-être nous par rappel Spanish flu qui se parlait des années 1960, 70 ou 40, that was one of the first historical worldwide lockdown that also happened in those days. Donc, peut-être nous allons dire que taking inspiration from the Spanish flu qui est arrivé dans le passé, it can actually support que we need a lockdown. Donc, ce que je veux dire, c'est que it's very easy to just put a measure taken by the government out, but to support it, show that you are in favor of that, that is what the essay title is requiring from you. OK? Donc, pour dire ça aussi. And quatrième kind of example capable, récemment, just yesterday morning, Japon hit the deuxième wave de coronavirus. OK? Which eventually shows ending a lockdown too soon is a bad measure, which actually makes you clarify your point that you are in agreement avec the measure taken by the government, which is simply just the lockdown. Donc, j'espère que vous avez compris exactement qui nous peut redire par donner l'exemple. Donc, comment tu fais un world news become an example in itself. Si je donne doute là, ça point spécifique là, moi, je peux envie de finir avoir un message à ce là même pour nous finir clarifier, parce que moi, je suis envie quand j'ai révisité, nous allons move un peu forward. Donc, very quickly, je n'ai un petit doute là, ce qui nous peut redire à ce là, just raise your hand, unmute yourself, ou bien just send a message, just very quickly.
Bonjour, and then the question the question title. Nous avons besoin le question title. Là, si vous pouvez trouver, vous avez besoin des affaires. Yeah, sorry. Si moi, je vais trouver, et nous avons les autres, vous avez envie de retourner à la previous question là, nous avons.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so I got a question like Mauritius is the only country in the world where the mother tongue Creole language is not accepted in parliament. What is your view? Yeah, so that's a question that's a little bit hard to like get concrete examples on. Like you can definitely like get the statistics of how many countries have their mother tongue in parliament, but like other kind of examples are a little bit harder to get if you don't know what your content is, what you want to talk about. So
yeah. Tu peux envie, just read the question again for everybody to understand. Donc, il y a une question de la part d'un élève, spontanément, c'est là. Donc, Mauritius is the only country in the world where the mother tongue, Creole, is not accepted in parliament. What is your view? Donc, c'est totally un essai que tu as gagné. Et que peut-être nous brainstorm là-dessus super quickly.
Okay, so I think the interesting thing here in the introduction that you need to actually understand like what's the significance of having your mother tongue in parliament, and also like so it's not just a question about like is it so or is it not so. It's more about like what do you understand by this, what's the significance of this. Do you think it should be put in parliament, or is it something that's not very important? Based on that, I would say like actually like analyze what does your mother tongue tell you about your culture itself, about like your values, and understand like what's the role of parliament and whether it should be about like our personal identity and our culture, or is it just something that's completely separate from it, like two different worlds. So I think that's the way I would tackle this
okay.
topic.
Pour moi, si maintenant pour tackle cette question-là personnellement, I would actually have gotten into language as an access to people. How many people are actually comfortable with hearing the parliament out in French or in English? How many people actually are okay with it? What does the Creole language demonstrate as a language itself? Parce que nous avons oublié que the Creole language is a very new language in the world. C'est très récemment qu'il y a même un dictionnaire pour ça, nous avons déchiffré the semantics and linguistics for it. Et que ça veut dire aussi que peut-être dans la langue créole itself, il y a une terminologie pour laquelle nous-mêmes prenons un mot pour ça. Alors qu'il est capable de borrow the term from English, from French, or from any other language for that matter. Donc, moi, je vous prends un instant de comment dire language and the accessibility to people. Peut-être à ça, nous avons une façon of examples. Si nous avons pour l'exemple pour ça, because of course, nous avons fait brainstorming, but we need to like support it with examples, right? Donc, pour moi, si je avais comme premier paragraphe, language, accessibility to people, I would definitely go to say that, première affaire, Maurice a une literacy rate de 89%. I don't know si pourcentage a fluctué depuis la dernière fois que je me fais recherche là-dessus, but it also means that since we have a literacy rate of 89% et qui jusqu'à l'âge de 16 ans, il est obligatoire pour tous les élèves à l'école, Donc, ça veut dire que you're definitely educated in a French and English medium. Ça veut dire que you do expect 89% of all Mauritians to understand French and English, which is currently available in the parliament. Let us also not forget that in an aging population de Maurice, il y a un certain pourcentage de cette aging population-là, c'est encore cause both free. Mais le fait qu'ils aient cause both free, ça veut dire qu'ils n'ont pas cause créole, ça veut dire qu'ils n'ont pas comprendre some kind of French ou bien some kind of English. Right? Donc, c'est juste pour comment dire, je connais que beaucoup de fois nous pensons à ces affaires-là, mais nous ne pensons pas à l'écrire dans un paragraphe. But I think that it is a good idea to give this background information to your examiner. Parce que l'examinateur, imagine he's an alien. He or she is an alien. They don't know anything about Mauritius. Give them background info. This background info is itself a supporting statement to what you're going to say ahead. Donc, donne ça un petit élément de, comment dire, information là, il est super important. To support the same paragraphe à ça, comme je vous disais, qui me pensait que, ok, moi, because l'hôtesse, qui me pensait que Creole language should be there in the parliament. Mon premier point, c'est peut-être parce que the respect of culture. OK? Dans le sens qu'il m'a pas envie, si mon envie as a country, as a gouvernement, as a choice, que the Creole language should be empowered, and avec mon envie dies out, one of the first institutions in the country that should endorse it is the parliament. Very simply put. OK? Moi, je vais donner un exemple pour ça. Par exemple, l'Inde, un pays qui a 28 ou bien 29 États d'affaires comme ça, même si quand il y a un langage qui parle couramment in the country, you can choose to make only English ou bien Hindi only spoken language in parliament. Le fait qu'ils ont allow 16 les autres langages de parlement is a respect of that language in itself, une façon de commemorate and make sure that that language is not being lost. Tu comprends? Donc, je suis capable de développer un paragraphe, un exemple comme ça. À la place de juste me dire, comment dire, qui, ouais, ben, mon envie juste, comment dire, qui, the language doesn't die out, donc, je viens faire ça. Me actually aller pour support mon paragraphe en lui-même avec the Indian Parliament. Moi-même, capable aller pour support avec le Parlement européen, par exemple. Like, if they wanted, they could have just conducted the parliament just in English, like a language in Europe where almost everybody is well versed with. But they choose to consciously have translators, they choose to consciously have those jobs to make sure that those essence in languages are not being lost. Donc, c'est que je veux dire, quand tu développes une idée, je veux vraiment l'exemple de partout. Donc, ça, c'est juste une idée que je vais mentionner là. Je vais finir de trois exemples qui sont causés là-dessus pour développer ça l'idée là. Ah, ça, si moi, que je vais un autre point, comme quoi, qui fait moi besoin préserve langue créole dans le parlement, moi capable que dans le sens, comment dire, qui, même si tu as un literacy rate de 89%, quand tu cause anglais et français, ça veut dire que tout le monde a le même langage soutenu, que tu comprends un débat which is happening in English and French. Ça, il y a déjà un paragraphe altogether. Et dans déjà un paragraphe là, moi capable d'un autre exemple. Comme quoi, qui, pas mal l'exemple là, vite par là, mais définitivement, moi capable le Google, par exemple, moi le Google News, ou bien moi le Flipboard, ou bien moi le BBC, ou bien moi le n'importe qui search, ou bien News Engine. Donc, juste type un keyword, comme quoi, qui est language and parliament. Donc, vous finissez par trouver un article ou un autre qui vous donne un supporting statement à la chose. OK? Moi, je pense que vous faire ça pour une de bonnes questions qui nous pourra aborder après. Mais si tu n'as pas ajouté quelque chose d'autre là-dessus, on verra.
I think you covered it pretty well. If they have questions though, then we can definitely look into it.
Yeah.
Based on the.
Je pense que nous pouvons définitivement faire un test de comment dire, quand on a un article ou bien un news article ou bien un truc après le Flipboard de Google, quelque chose de ce genre. Mais j'espère que ça va pas trop vite. Parce qu'en même temps, comme on faisait, je brainstorm quand j'ai des sub-ideas, mais je essaie de montrer comment tu prends une seule idée et que je fais quand j'ai les autres pieces of examples of what is happening around the world, tu lis ce paragraphe. Et quand on essaie comment tu les trouver, I don't necessarily need to have read a lot of articles to be able to just look for supporting statements from places.
Yeah.
Nous avons une troisième question given by someone else. Yeah. Progressive people are advocating the legislation of abortion to solve to solve the world's immediate socio-economic problems. What is your reaction to the statement? Vous répétez?
Can you the comics send it to everyone there? Like copy paste send it to everyone there.
To everyone. Donc, on va répéter question là. Progressive people advocating the legislation of abortion, veut dire que Banjimun qui progressive, donc liberal in thought, want the legalization of abortion pour qu'ils solve the world's immediate socio-economic problems. What is your reaction to the statement? Donc, j'ai l'impression que la question là est super axée le fait que to allow abortion would probably population reduce or population control to be able to solve socio-economic problem. At least c'est l'interprétation qui vient de gagner. Pour toi, Omera?
En fait, moi, je vais plus sur le mindset shift comme ça, parce que quand on a legalized abortion, tu veux okay, people have the right to choose. It, that will actually like have an impact on a lot of different things. Like, abortion is one, but like even science and tech, like ethics in science and tech is going to be another thing. Choosing, I mean, it's like LGBT will have an impact on it will have an impact on the LGBT issue. There is so much of like lifestyle changes that can happen, like mindset changes that can happen. I also interpret it a little bit like this. Yeah. But
okay.
like I think this question is very loaded. Like this question might need a little bit more brainstorming just because like it's talking specifically about progressive people. It's talking about immediate socioeconomic problems. So you actually need to like understand what progressive means and what are the immediate socioeconomic problems that you want to tackle in this essay. And if like you also want to like keep in mind that you might be limiting yourself in some sense. So keep in mind of what limit you're putting in there. Yeah. But we can do like a quick example of brainstorming.
Ok. C'est moi j'ai envie juste highlight super quickly à celle-là. J'ai encore trouvé que pour la même question, moi j'ai un différent take et Omera a un différent take altogether, which is actually the really good example de interpretation of questions. Donc moi j'ai un different reasoning, Omera a un different reasoning pour elle-même. Donc ça montre les autres comme quoi qu'un essai, il vraiment dépend les autres de take et il vraiment dépend de comment se décide pour interpréter les autres. Et à quel niveau de confort de sentir OK pour débattre la question. Donc, peut-être si tu as envie, prends un premier point pour sa question-là et nous allons élaborer avec un exemple.
Okay, so introduction, I would like introduce the socioeconomic problems I would tackle. So maybe I would really go for LGBT here. So what that would mean in terms of paragraph is I would like I would use an idea for each paragraph, and then in each of the paragraphs I would relate it to the example that to the examples of socioeconomic problems. So I would say like, okay, so maybe the first idea is like legalization of abortion will pave the way to legalization of other types of other lifestyles in some sense. And then I would say, okay, well, if you allow for the choice of what you want to do with your body, then you also need to account for the choice of how you want to live your life. And one example would be LGBT. And I would talk about, well, this is more like qualitative arguments.
Yeah,
it's more qualitative arguments than quantitative. So I would say like the proponents of abortion or that would be the example. The proponents of abortion or of putting forward the claim that a woman needs to have the right to her own body. I would probably like, I mean, you have to say like, okay, where are the people who are saying this in? So like, what countries is this actually going on in? And try to see like, okay, has this change in like legalization status, does it actually like really influence other types of legalizations? That would be the example I would try to get.
Je pense qu'il y a une façon super intéressante pour aborder cela, parce qu'en même temps, comment dire que tu peux essayer de justifier les autres, on peut recevoir le mot fléau ou bien mœurs de la société, mais les autres sujets de la société plutôt pour qu'ils te valident.
Ouais, un sujet tabou, un sujet sensible.
Voilà. Because like it's a very intelligent way of actually qui aborder tes questions Comme quoi, parce que l'abordement, c'est définitivement un truc encore tabou, I guess, pour un conchement du monde. Donc, te débattre tes points par rapport à un sujet tabou en utilisant un autre sujet tabou. Il y a une façon super intéressante pour faire un essai. Actuellement, pas contre personne écrit un essai comme ça. Donc, si ça donne l'idée, peut-être, une façon pour vous d'écrire cet essai, feel free, c'est capable d'incorporer ça à un essai. Là, je trouve super intéressant. Moi, comment je get titre là, honestly, like thinking from, ok, je gagne ce début Zoom là. Weird. Anyway. Si maintenant je pense en termes de comment dire ça c'est là, comment titre là, comment on get li, et que façon on interprète comment dire population reduction, les chiffres et socio-economic factors, honestly, première affaire qui vient dans ma tête, c'est que un statement fait par le gouvernement chinois à chaque fois quand il y a une UN convention, surtout pour UNDP, avec pour I forgot the section of UN qui pour une affaire écologique, pro-environnement, etc. Donc, la Chine tout en maintenir dit que ce one-child policy helps reduce carbon emission in the world by a huge percentage. And they actually have scientific data for it. Donc, moi, je pense que c'est la première affaire qui me vient dans la tête. And it's actually an example that a lot of people wouldn't think of because it's just such a rare piece of statement to know about. Donc, pour moi, I don't know, like, I'm une façon de comme si quand on me get ban titre, instead of even thinking of the point avant, je vais l'exemple just like clicks, and I use that to make that a point in itself at times. Donc, je si c'est une façon qui est capable et les élèves travaillent sur un essai, sur un point, because like not everybody has the same way of thinking. Mais à chaque fois qu'il nous dit qu'on a fini brainstorm un essai avec les là, toi, un d'exemple pour chacun. But some students, me included, me finit par s'encancher dans l'exemple. Là, moi, prends l'exemple. Moi, je fais un paragraphe avec lui. I don't know if it could help some, but if it could work for you, then why not? Tu comprends? Like, si tu es un humain qui est marié, beaucoup de humains qui est marié, beaucoup de news channels, etc. You should be having some kind of really stellar news or the other qui could make a paragraph a rock star in itself. And having so many paragraphs of the sort would make your entire essay really good. Donc, yeah, if that can help people in terms of...
Yeah, I think one thing that one structured way of actually like accessing that kind of thinking is like you can brainstorm your examples itself. Like there's the idea of having individual examples, social, national, and international. So putting like this question, you can have it on an individual level, like what does it mean for women in the future? You can have it on the social level. How is society affected by this? You can have it in terms of national. So you are going to legalize it nationally. So what's going to be the effect on the nation in terms of what's going to happen next? And international is the example you said, like one-child policy. Like how does it affect all countries and stuff? Yeah.
Même en termes de peut-être des local examples, moi, giving the agency of choice to teenage girls in terms of teenage pregnancy, it can help their socio-economic situation in the future. Donc, il y a beaucoup de petits affaires qui sont venues comme ça quand je fais brainstorm. Donc, yeah, it's a really good question. Donc, vous êtes vraiment connu dans qui interprétation vous décidez pour amener. But in any interpretation you bring it, what's important, c'est que vous avez l'exemple d'un super solide and well-founded. Et une quatrième question. Modern science has made today's world increasingly dangerous. Do you agree? Just copy-paste it to everyone. Donc, modern science has made today's world increasingly dangerous. Do you agree? Donc, encore que moi, je peux envie de différencier entre content word et action words. Donc, the content word, c'est modern science has made today's world increasingly dangerous. Do you agree? C'est action word. Donc, je peux actually expect soit d'autres introductions, soit d'autres conclusions pour écrire that my stance is, ou bien que seeing the above discussions or this and that, the design and stand à la fin. Donc, pas oublier ça, c'est ça qui vous fait et c'est bien relevant. Donc, peut-être un petit brainstorm, peut-être, on verra.
Okay. there is true a set of like current stuff here. There's the modern science, and then there's the today's world. So you both have to think about like what does modern science say and how does it affect now.
Yeah.
So on that you actually need to narrow down which fields of science we'll be talking about. Like for example, you won't be talking about Newtonian physics. We'll be probably talking about like genetic engineering or like even in genetic engineering, we can talk about like mapping out the human DNA. You can have like GMOs. You can have that would be for genetic engineering, and then you can think about other fields like maybe what are other fields? Earth systems, for example. So the study of pollution, the study of how does like having poorer countries like contribute to agriculture, but not really doing that in richer countries. How is it affecting the world economy? Those kind of things could be interesting to talk about here.
Si je
Just in the modern science.
si je cache juste certaines affaires ici, c'est que c'est super important qui, comme on m'a mentionné, mais on va juste highlighter plus, qu'ils comprennent ça en termes de modern science et today's world. Parce que, tenez quand tu gagnes un titre comme ça, il est super facile pour gagner des élèves carrément des calendriers de flou que, ouais, ben, ils inventent avion, à cause d'un avion, que ça quitte la globalisation et que ça devient plus beaucoup pandémique. It's a very simple thought to have, and it's a very old school science to talk about. So, like it's been over what 70, 80 years that planes are flying in the sky now. I'm not sure to what extent that qualifies as modern. Donc, je pense que des fois, en tant qu'élève, tu penses que, okay, out of the 12 questions tu as gagné, this looks like the easiest question to tackle because like, oh, science and technology, we keep doing it, amazing, I'll do it again. But actually, c'est grave it's talking about modern science. Okay, si ça commence que atomic bomb, I'll be like, dude, in which era are you living? Tu comprends? Donc, c'est super important que je à la de modern science là. Peut-être, moi, pas on tackle un truc comme dark matter, tackle un truc comme quantum computing, tackle un truc comme stem cells, qui est un peu plus modern. Like, you have been hearing about this in the past decade, instead of like even 20 years ago. I'm not sure to what extent 20 years ago is a new science. Donc, moi, pense qu'il y en avait
even like data science. Yeah.
Il y en avait super important pour mettre ça comme un keyword. I think this is exactly the kind of thinking that differentiates an average student to like a good student.
Yep.
Yeah.
And really interesting here is increasingly. So it's not just like it's making the word dangerous, but it's making it increasingly dangerous. So you have to actually think about the trend. So whenever you're having an example, you actually think about the trend. Is that making it more dangerous, or is it actually not making it more dangerous, same as before?
Yeah. Et peut-être, peut-être encore une fois, like tout le temps, je pense en termes de l'exemple avant, like I just have like this thing. Comment on dit ça, like en place, mais on commence à penser à une conne de peut-être, no, it's not modern science that is making the world increasingly dangerous, but old school science could also be making the world increasingly dangerous. Donc, on prend à cause de un carburant qui n'est pas écologique, par exemple. Ou bien un exemple qui I really hold to heart, like I really love that example, comme quoi que today, and that's exactly qui nous appelle cross-curricular linking dont on ici. Nous beaucoup discuter le cross-curricular linking avec Banane YouTube, but hopefully we will be able to start doing it soon. Comme quoi que yesterday, like days ago, like years ago, the Chibisan Commander you have been weaponized to do a terror act, like to be a terrorist, basically, right? Today, anybody with a mere car can be a terrorist, right? Nous trouvons un incident qui s'est arrivé à France, à Cannes, and l'auteur on the beach and started like scramming over people. So, like, it's not modern, it's not a modern technology or modern piece of science, like vehicles. It's not, right? Forget, like, of course, like science and technology is like two different things, but just to give you an example, it's old school, but it's becoming increasingly dangerous depending on the way that you're using it as well. Donc, c'est peut-être un peu vous donner une notion de insist essay in how many different ways you can actually interpret it, like the same title. Yep. Donc, j'ai 4 questions là. Pour l'instant, personne pourquoi avoir aucun des autres titres.
Moi-même, non.
OK.
Evaluate the impacts of recurrent major natural calamities on a country. This one is even harder to find examples. So you actually need to think about where have there been major recurrent natural calamities. One example that I've recently been reading about is like China's floods. It's not like every 10 years old. It's not very recent, but like there has been like flooding of rivers, which have created a lot of problems in China. So
Yeah.
you have to look examples like this. You can't just like you maybe even like monsoons in the Indian kind of Indian countries. No, not Indian countries, but like the countries around India. So the
Yeah.
monsoon seasons. You can think about like droughts in specific places in Africa, I guess, like
Yeah,
famines
Morocco
in
for that
Africa.
matter,
But like
Sahara. Yeah.
you need to know the examples here. Definitely need to know the examples.
Yeah. Mais personnellement, Nancy me pensait que sa question évaluer the impacts of recurrent major natural calamities on a country, il y a une question actually facile in a way of speaking.
Yeah.
Because the action word is evaluate. It's not assess. It's not to what extent. It's not in your view. The action word evaluate is actually a very easy action word to tackle in a GPSC. Aussi, je pensais que, pour ajouter à quoi, sur un point, tu as par exemple l'Australian bushfires qui est arrivé récemment, en janvier. Tu as l'Amazonian bushfires qui est arrivé. Of course, it's arguable to what extent it was actually a natural calamity instead of arsonry, but that's human-made. But je pensais que don't forget the part of the impacts. Veut dire que quand on a natural calamity, tu es capable d'avoir socio-economic impacts, comme tu as disease impacts, comme tu es capable d'avoir un impact politique, comment tu es capable d'avoir un impact de développement infrastructurel, for that matter. Donc aussi in the précipitation pour donner l'exemple de ma natural calamity qui est arrivé, pas oublier the word impacts. Okay?
Yeah, no, for sure. Like whenever you're writing your paragraphs here, the real focus is not on the natural calamities, it's really on the impacts. And natural calamities are just used to illustrate like where has this happened and like what kind of impact did it have. Not don't confuse like where the focus should be.
Exactly. Aussi peut-être, moi pensais si nous avons illustré bien par un point, c'est peut-être œuvre qui est arrivé au Népal. I think it was 4 ans de cela, en Kathmandu. Donc, quand ça n'arrive au Népal, quand il y a un earthquake là-bas, donc, of course, il y a une economic consequence. En même temps, the tourist industry over there suffered a bottleneck entirely. En même temps, tout ban political treaties qui sont là pour faire avec une ressource qui n'est pas supposée supply to the neighboring countries, suddenly just like came to stand still. Donc, quand tu as les autres petites affaires qui arrivent, ben, c'est qui peut différencier toi avec un autre élève dans ça essai-là, I think, parce qu'il y a une so like generic to tackle, c'est the quality of the example you're going to give, I think. Surtout the depth of the combien tu peux élaborer le impacts. Si je pense nous quand mettre dans l'exemple, peut-être il vaut la peine de passer un peu les temps là-dessus, c'est peut-être un flash flood qui s'est passé Maurice en 2013. Okay, it is a natural calamity in a way of speaking.
Yeah, so puisqu'il est un long phase recurrent, je ne pas trop sûr comment tu talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
Talk about like rainy, torrential rain is I think is better for Mauritius because we do have cyclone season and we do have like purely torrential rain seasons. And what we can say here is like the impact on the country is like if you don't actually think about drainage system, if you don't actually think about ways to mitigate that, I think we just lost Rowena.
No, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. If you don't think about like ways to actually mitigate those risks, you actually have like people dying, you have economic situations that can arise. Like you have to actually like drain out the water at some point. You can't just let the cars go by. You can think of it in that way. So torrential rain and cyclonic weather in Mauritius. That would be recurrent.
Definitely, like because of the word recurrent, like you can't use flash flood because it didn't keep happening. But torrential rain, or even like cyclones, like they're recurrent, right? But then we can also argue on the fact of major. Donc, je pense que ça, là aussi, teach nous, c'est like, how do you define the boundaries of each term that is in the question requirement? Donc, ça fait aussi que, like, des fois, il y a une question par message, ban élèves vraiment par instant message, like, oui, can I put this? Honestly speaking, you can put anything you want until and unless you're able to define it within the question requirement. Si comment dire, tu peux define recurrent comme every 100 years, but that's your terminology of recurrent, you have to explicitly say it there. It's not advisable, but ce que je peux dire par ça, c'est que any word has a definition that you choose to give it because it's open to interpretation. As long as you're clarifying that in the essay, you're good to go.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of recurrent in terms of like the globe, like the world, universe history. And you can say like ice ages or something recurrent.
That's actually recurrent in that aspect. Actually, recurrent est capable autant bien que une semaine, que 10 ans, que 5 ans, que 1 an, que
you have to
millions.
Definitely have to define what you mean by recurrent in this.
Yeah, and it's very important. I think it's and ça fait que actually beaucoup posé par nous ça que the question has the definition that you choose to give it. So whenever like student asks me like on chat like can I put this, I'm like feel free, but define why you're putting it there. Sixième exemple, un cinquième exemple, I believe. Enfin, question peut-être, mais gagné. Given the global catastrophes of the last half billion years, consider how far humans and other species might survive in the future. Attends, je vais envoyer la personne pour envoyer to everyone still. Yeah. Donc, vous pensez que c'est super intéressant que nous gardions question c'était là, because this question actually defines the time period. It actually goes to tell you the last half billion years. Okay? Donc, comme une question comme ça, it doesn't leave you a lot to go and define on your own. It's very specific. Donc, c'est super nice que nous gardions question c'était là, because in comparison to what we had as an open question, cette question est bien designed, like punched. Si tu n'as pas dire quelque chose, question en termes d'un petit brainstorming, Omera.
Côté brainstorming, en fait, je remarque c'est pas, il y a assez, je cas toujours interprété différentes façons. Là, dans the last half billion years, it's not necessarily that you're talking about like at the half billion year mark what happened, but you can also talk about like pandemic evolutions, for example. That would be an interesting thing to say here. You can talk about like global warming and what actually happens when the temperature of the world rises. It's an interesting question because here it's not talking about calamities, but really global catastrophes, things that have more an impact on the world itself than on like specific countries. I really like that question. Pandemic and global warming are the things that I'm thinking most of right now. But even here, like notice that the focus is not on the catastrophes, but on how humans and other species might survive. So survival in the future is what your focus should be on here.
Yeah.
The catastrophes is just so that you know, okay, what kind of things will I be using as illustrations?
C'est ça la question un peu. Yeah. La question que ce content word, c'est the past global catastrophes que nous avons. And so requirement of the action word, c'est que qui projection il peut y avoir l'impact futuristique. Donc, on pense que c'est super important pour comprendre ça là. En même temps, alors qu'il interprète catastrophe as climate change ou bien d'affaires environmentally constructed, tu aussi tu as même l'interprétation comme why can't une récession globale be a catastrophe? Why can't why can't mass genocides be considered as a moral catastrophe? Tu comprends? Donc, je pense que c'est super important que quand je gagne une question, je pense que ce professeur nous a déjà dit ça, que je actually spend 10 minutes pour analyser cette question-là. Et je vais trouver que quand on gagne une question-là, tu peux actually aller mot à mot, tu peux identify the content word, tu peux identify the action word, et que là, tu peux essayer de penser, une catastrophe, est-ce qu'il est besoin environmental, est-ce qu'il n'est pas capable économique, est-ce qu'il n'est pas capable historique, est-ce qu'il n'est pas capable social, est-ce qu'il n'est pas capable politique. The rise of democracy, the rise of communism, est-ce qu'il n'est pas capable. I mean, like I told you previously in the previous question, the word has the meaning that you choose to give it. And that's like the really good thing about comment se développer un essai. Le fait qu'ils sont capables d'ouvrir les autres à différentes interprétations d'un mot, ça même finit par donner combien content points. Right? Yeah. I hope que ça donne ban enlightenment points donc comment est-ce qu'ils sont capables de voir une question qui pas nécessairement restrict eux-mêmes donc comment dire façon de interpréter et qui ça montre qu'ils sont capables d'interpréter une question de la façon qu'ils choose to interpret it so as long as you define it et pas oublier place que de définir façon qu'ils interprètent cette question c'est cette introduction.
I have 2 more questions. I'm just going to send them. I think right now what we can do best is like we choose one question that specifically speaks to us, and then we actually go through the process of finding examples online and just doing it that way. Because what we've been doing is like rapid firing, kind of like brainstorming examples and stuff. So maybe something that's going to be like useful to them in the long run of like 1 hour 45 minutes of writing the essay. How that's going to. So maybe the causa and to am causa and more than get issue. Think about
Okay, donc vous trouvez qu'il y a deux questions
là. We can work on one. Yeah, no, so we can like go through all the questions that we did and then just like choose one that we're going to go in like more deep. Like
okay.
We're going to go more depth. And then just like
show
how we would research the examples.
Si je peux envie, peut-être nous prend une demande que je te envoie là, là. Donc, in today's globalized world, should we seek to retain our unique cultural identity? Avec deuxième, how far do you agree that online learning during this confinement period is useful? To be honest, like whichever one.
I think the second one is better for me because I'm actually more into like the learning, the education sphere than cultural identity. That's not really my fault. But yeah.
Okay, cool. Donc peut-être nous faire un brainstorming together avant. Là, nous avons l'exemple pour lui. Mais juste pas envie miss out de première question parce que like somebody sent it and I just don't want to like oversee it.
Yeah. Donc, okay, you can go over it while I brainstorm the. You can go over it while I brainstorm the second
question. Allez, ok, cool, parfait. Allez, donc, ok, on va rappeler la deuxième question. Est-ce qu'on va la première question avec eux? Donc, question là, c'est que in today's globalized world, should we seek to retain our unique cultural identity? Donc, définitivement, content word là, c'est que tu as les mondes qui sont super global aujourd'hui. Et est-ce que tu as une identité culturelle? Est-ce que vous avez retain it? OK? Et the action word is should we. Donc, littéralement, vous pouvez expecter qu'il soit dans cette introduction ou dans une conclusion, vous avez un clear yes ou un clear no. À moins de un clear yes ou un clear no, peut-être un in between. OK? Yes, but or no, but. But moi, j'ai envie de trouver ce standpoint. OK? C'est un affaire qui me trouve un manquement qui, malgré qu'il se finit, élabore un canché par un point de body paragraph en termes de thèse et antithèse. In the conclusion, je ne pas trouve un standpoint. Surtout when it comes to questions like should, assess, to what extent, what are your views? Because the question has been asked to you. I do expect you to actually put your opinion there. Like my standpoint, c'est ça. Donc, pas oublier, definitely make an effort in becoming more expressive dans cette stand qu'ils avaient prendre for and against, dans cette conclusion surtout. Parce que de finir après tout, donner une quantité ban, élaboration sur la chose. Astea, honestly, pour sa question-là, I don't think there's anybody better qui ban mauricien pour actually répondre à sa question-là. OK? Because like, les causes un peu l'identité culturelle, alors que nous-mêmes nous retrouvons en tant que mauriciens super perplexes ou bien super confus par rapport à notre identité culturelle. Est-ce qu'il y a une identité culturelle qui par rapport à une ethnicité? Est-ce qu'il y a une identité culturelle par rapport à une nationalité? Est-ce qu'il y a ça par rapport à juste l'environnement par laquelle on émerge? OK? Donc, vous pensez qu'il y a une question super intéressante pour un mauricien aborder. Donc, question là, c'est should. Donc, définitivement, c'est que je vous ai fait la question-là. Je vous ai mis un côté de thèse qui va l'avantage si chacun d'entre nous préserve l'identité culturelle et qui va des avantages si nous pas fait. Donc, ce qui est arrivé, c'est que disons que dans ma thèse, je mettais que l'importance de préserver l'identité culturelle, c'est que nous avons une unique identity et que nous celebrate the heterogeneity in society. OK? Ça veut dire que because everybody is not the same, I'm able to recognize myself. OK? Donc, ça vient une façon un peu plus philosophique pour commencer un point paragraphe. Maintenant, c'est, disons, si tu fais envie, amène l'exemple à ça. Je vais dire quelque chose comme, ben, si tout pays est pareil, ben, pas de aucune différence. Ou bien, je vais dire un truc comme, je vais prendre un truc assez philosophique comme, c'est uniquement dans l'absence de quelque chose qui n'a pas existé qui sont capables de réaliser ce qui existe exactement. Les VNP, comment the theory of matter et antimatter, the theory of light and darkness. Donc, il y a un paragraphe super philosophique. Donc, en essentiel, en lui-même, pas nécessairement qu'il se peut être capable de donner l'exemple qui matériel, qui est quoted by something, but c'est que aussi fait, tu es capable actually quote the Bible, tu es capable de quote un philosophe comme Lao Tzu, tu es capable de quote un poète comme Rumi, and it would still be considered as an argumentation dans un paragraphe de why should you maintain a cultural identity unique to yourself. Deuxième point que je vais mentionner peut-être, c'est que there is such a thing as unity in diversity. C'est que malgré la diversité, c'est capable de live in peace and harmony. It makes an amazing society. It actually melo then really good melting pot. It actually show the human demonstration of the capacity of being able to live together in peace. Et actually là, je suis même capable de quote the national anthem de Maurice. Feel free about that. Et je même capable prendre un topic comme je capable prendre l'exemple comme quoi que dans les autres pays qui décident pour pas vivre en harmonie d'espace de différence, they end up to become war zones, to they end up having constant riots, alors qu'en Maurice, c'est pas nécessairement un truc comme ça. Donc, comment je vais trouver, je ne vais pas juste donner une idée, mais je vais aller pour bien support de l'idée avec une source which are actually credited and is actually quoted. Si maintenant pour l'antithèse Aster, par exemple, que dans un globalized world, alors que tout le monde peut actually voyager et un mélange. Donc, this hybridization of culture, qui a fait de sorte comme quoi qui, une culture en lui-même ne pouvait plus exister. Tu comprends? Tu as été justement Aster-là qui avec la langue, avec l'anglais même. Tu as un pays qui cause English. Tu as un autre pays, par exemple, l'Inde qui cause Hindi avec English en même temps, donc tu as une terminologie qui s'appelle English. Tu as un Singapourien, je ne pas cause exactement English, je cause un affaire qui s'appelle Singlish. Donc, c'est Singaporean English together. Donc, c'est qu'à te créer une autre langue en lui-même et peut-être, au bout du compte, sa langue initiale, langue langue, finit par disparaître dans les mondes. Tu comprends? Donc, tu as une façon qui est capable de débattre, te mettre même un point. But the point is that the point is constantly well supported by different examples. Et il y a un point qui me dit c'est la même là. Il n'est pas nécessairement que c'est pas un point qui se peut lire dans l'article, il n'est pas nécessairement un point qu'ils ont trouvé dans un journal ou un reportage, mais le fait qu'il paraît tellement worldly, il finit par faire ce paragraphe paraître vraiment solide. Donc peut-être si moi je juste que sa première question là, et bon, on ne verra pas là, mais je suis capable peut-être à la dernière question là, que how far do you agree that online learning during this confinement period is useful? Et nous pouvons actually aller reprendre l'exemple ensemble pour qu'ils nous comprennent exactement comment on fait ce process-là. Donc, yes.
On finit Brainstorm bien, on n'est que share mon screen, que faire ça. Ok. Hoping that works. Yeah. So I actually already brainstormed a little bit. There's a lot of interesting things that I found out when I was brainstorming. So the first thing is that the country is not specified here. You would assume that it's for your country, but you can actually like take it to interpret it as much wider than that. So this confinement period can be for like generally for the world, like how has the confinement period been implemented everywhere eventually, and just think about how have the different countries tackled education, the issue of education in those in this period. So that would be one thing. So there's no specified country. The context of online learning is just is also broad. It's like you can have urgent video conference with teachers. You can also have like videos on YouTube. You can have websites that already like lay out the learning process for like the content itself. Another thing is useful to whom. So I think it's not just to students, but also to like um, content creators, like educators. How is online learning more useful to them also in some sense? Um, and one thing that I was thinking about in the case of educators is like once you put your video on YouTube, you don't actually have to like teach it again. Just show them to all of the future students that you can have. That would be one thing. And then also the thing that I thought about is how far do you agree that online learning during this confinement period is useful? You actually have to contrast it to like what's the alternative of learning, waiting for the confinement to end. What really do you want to compare it to? Because usefulness is always as compared to something else. You can't just have like if everything is the same, there's no point of having the word useful. Like it's just as it is. There's nothing to compare it with. That's how I brainstormed it, and based on that, I would say that you have to you need like some understanding of how online learning is happening right now. So try to find examples on both like audio and video conference issues, pros, and also like how has the use of YouTube, like educational videos on YouTube, how has it increased? How is it useful to, and how is it not useful? I think you have to go and find examples on those aspects. Do you have something you want to like add on that?
Yeah, definitely. Je pensais qu'en même temps, la question-là, nous pas nécessairement négliger d'une façon from only one single glare. Par exemple, yeah, online learning est capable, comme useful, est capable d'être, but what if I don't even have access to it?
Yeah.
Right? Donc, je pensais que même quand nous brainstorm un essai, il n'est pas nécessairement comme quoi qui nous reste fixé là, just following the question's bias, but we also can defy the question in itself. I really think it's a really smart way to tackle a question if you have the aptitude for it. It is also comfortable to do it, right? Donc, nous aussi caractériser comme quoi que tout ban strata social, pas nécessairement qui peut the exact same access to online learning, ou peut-être aussi tu as un truc comme okay, despite the fact that an online penetration rate in the country which is near to 90%, connexion internet qui toujours gagne pas pareil. Like the knowledge and the subject and the material put online may be there. Laisse-nous oublier peut-être the content may not entirely be right because récemment nous trouvons une quantité d'instances, même de la part de MBC, I think, que tu as beaucoup d'erreurs dans ce ban notes, etc. que nous montrons la télévision. Despite the fact that it might be of quality, pas veut dire que tu vas the good access to it. Aussi, je pense qu'il y a une autre affaire qui nous a aussi pensé, c'est que même si on pense d'un côté comme la technologie des élèves, nous pas bien de penser d'un côté professeur aussi. The number of teachers qui actually have difficulty at this moment to onboard with technology is phenomenal. Parce qu'ils passent de tout un certain niveau de confort avec l'utilisation de technologie. Et la professeur, ils n'avaient pas de tandem Zoom avant. Et un professeur, peut-être, ils n'ont pas confortable peut-être pour faire des notes en PDF, envoyer. Même, par exemple, pour corriger des voix. Like, peut-être it's much more easier to corrige des voix au Google Docs que de immediately mettre un comments. But then, quand les élèves peuvent juste avoir par photo, à cette heure, tu disais, prends photo là, mais ma remarque, like, how do you exactly correct that when you don't have the exact tools for it? Donc, ça, equipment, both in terms of knowledge of the use of the technology et the access to it. Donc, c'est définitivement un aspect qui me pense, nous, quand on dans la question. Aussi, si je share mon screen très vite fait,
Yeah.
pour qu'il me montre juste à l'online, donc je vais juste share mon screen super vite. Can you see anything? No?
Yeah. Okay, now
Okay, cool. Donc, ce qui m'a fait, moi, juste aller au Google News, littéralement, like Google et News, si vous regardez mon cœur, suivre-moi. Mais littéralement, prends question là, qui multiplie into the search bar. Ok, là, je allais me trouver News Straight Times Online, in un article, 15 hours ago, Hello Monaco, in un article. Fine. Mais maintenant, un peu plus en bas, il y a un en spécifique, une super, like, strike moi. C'est ça l'article de The Most Common Question About Divorce Being Asked Amidst the Coronavirus. OK? Ça est hoppersbazaar.com. Là, je vais trouver question là. Donc, honnêtement, je ne vais pas link là, je vais pas lire, but it just like, gives an idea. Like, tu es capable de faire online learning, but you're doing online learning at home. You're not going out of your home and doing it at school. Donc, the amount of peut-être dysfunctional family impact, the amount of mental health that you're going to be exposed with in terms of issues or instability or in terms of somebody's having a fight somewhere or just you not being used to study at home, à la place de l'école, was actually making you be in a safer environment than at home. Donc, c'est un affaire qui me super content de faire moi quand je gagne un essai. Je suis content de aller look for like different kind of ideas that may be around in the net because as a preparatory stage to your final exams in 2 years or in like a year's time, avant novembre vini, I feel like it gives you a lot to think about. Par exemple, I'm pretty sure, like, obviously, quand je suis une high, c'est là, même moi, je vais penser, mais ça, là, c'est là, moi. Moi, je pense pas à écrire des affaires comme quoi qui, bon, quand même, online learning, but the fact that online learning is having to take place at home, alors qu'at home may not be really like a mentally safe haven, emotionally safe haven for me to do that online learning. Et actually, si tu fais une recherche, une statistique de the number of divorce requests that has increased during the COVID, it's all true. Donc, c'est juste un simple logic that actually triggered my mind to think in certain ways. Of course, c'est pas une ressource qui peut available to you during, like, in the exam hall. But what I think it's good practice, you're just in level 6, that you're doing it initially right now. It really gives you ouvert la tête. Super ouvert to horizon. That, oh my God, like actually it's a thought. It's actually something that I would probably not think about it in my exam hall, comme l'examen. But if a year before, 2 years beforehand, je fini commence train moi-même pour rappeler how many pieces of information là, dude, you're going to have one of the most stellar examples to write about in the exam as compared to just like mon leçon, mon gagne un petit piece of information comme quoi que il y a des just the normal points. Tiens, qui tu veux parler là-dessus, Omer?
Yeah, so what I did is, you went for Google News. I just tried doing it on Google Scholar. You're not going to get a lot of examples for both online learning and COVID-19 on Google Scholar because it's a relatively new issue. But what I did is like I started brainstorming a little bit and I tried. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I tried.
Just pour,
I tried thinking about it in like online education in emergency situations, and I realized like it's not just students of like high school or like secondary school, primary school. It's also about like undergraduate students, like people who are going to be doctors and who have to like actually start working right now just because there's not enough doctors right now. So I mean, we have to like actually think about like, is online education going to meet that need for them? There are like so many interesting things about emergency education too. And I mean, if we think about it, like we're not just learning about school stuff, academic stuff online right now. We're also learning about like how to cope with the COVID-19, how to cope with like stress, how to cope with so many things. And I didn't think about it until I read this here.
Exactly.
So that's an interesting thing.
Yeah. If I can just like clarify very quickly, Umera, just like to make everybody understand. So like Google Scholar, c'est actually une partie de Google que tu gagnes tout bas news, academic journal, qui te peut trouver le search engine là. Donc, on tout le temps quand on Google, nous connaissons Google Images et Google. C'est pas vraiment l'âge que t'as beaucoup moins les réponses en termes de Google Scholar News, but just so you know, it's actually really good tool si tu as servi pour ce ta rôle ban l'idée. Désolé pour toi, but just like to clarify with them.
Yeah, no, I was going to go back to that because I realized too, like I'm just jumping on Google Scholar without explaining anything. Yeah, so Google Scholar is really interesting, but is going to be much deeper. So definitely go on Google News, get a little bit of sense of what's happening.
Yeah.
Then if you really like want to go deeper into it, go on Google Scholar. It's going to be hard to read the papers on there, but even just reading the introduction, that will give you an
Gives a
idea of
lot.
what.
Moi, je
Yeah,
pense actually,
yeah.
yeah, moi, je pense actually envie de faire, yeah, ça, Omera, si tu peux peut-être retourner au previous page, mais tu trouves an introduction super intéressant, si tu peux at the bottom entirely.
This one?
Donc, yeah, at the bottom. Donc, the top 10 ways to reconcile social media and traditional education in emergency care. Donc, honestly, juste à première vue, ok, nous avons ouvert page là, tu peux ouvrir, c'était là. Pour mettre avec une pensée, dude, when you're doing online education, you have access to the internet, and so your social media page being open could be a distraction. So, is it actually rendering online learning useful? Comment vous avez trouvé avec ça ici title là, we didn't even think about all of this. But just going in the correct platforms like Google News or Google Scholar, just in a way of speaking, there's other platforms as well. It starts giving you ideas.
Yeah, so I think this is really interesting. Just this part in the introduction, social media has been viewed by some as a threat to traditional medical education. So people are actually getting medical knowledge from social media, which is not necessarily a good thing. And this is actually an interesting way of interpreting that question itself. Like online learning, yes, but what kind of information are we getting from the online sources?
And from where?
Yeah. Yeah, so that would be, you're not going to get access to this text because it's hidden by the site, but like, that's one problem you get with Google Scholar. You might not be able to read the full thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still interesting. Oh, here, I do have access to it. You just have to click on the PDF place.
Si je peux ajouter, mais ça finit le point là avant, actually.
Okay. Je peux j'excuse.
On a un nouveau point altogether, donc on doit finir avant plutôt.
Okay. Yeah, so that's the actual like PDF page of it. It's not that long, it's 3 pages, I think. Yeah, so 1, 2, 3. It's 3 pages. It's going to give you a very specific context, but it might be useful if you are interested in that, in like other topics as well, because here medical care is actually also part of science itself. So it could be an interesting thing to investigate just because of other kinds of knowledge to give you. Okay, that's what I had to say for this one.
Okay. Moi, ça a juste venu dans la tête un coup super bref, brièvement, like super vite. And vraiment, rappelle-moi, je peux lire l'article comme quoi que the clothes that you wear eventually goes to define the mindset that you find yourself in. Okay, c'est un article qui me rappelle, moi je disais que it was very well quoted in an academic article actually. Comme quoi, si tu habilles toi comment and clown, you will actually feel like a clown. If you dress up with like suit and attire, you actually feel a bit like, okay, I have a certain status. If you dress up like really cheap, you'll actually feel like you're poor. Donc un peu quand il y a the theatrical effects seeping into you. Et ça, c'est un article que je lis par rapport à un essai GP. Là, un titre entirely. Mais assez si je profite de l'occasion pour expliquer qui me rejoint par cross-curricular linking. Get ça même l'article que je lis là, qui peut un essai d'idée carrément différent. Je suis capable de prendre ça, mais c'est là. How? Le fait que tu peux learn online means that you're not going to school, you're not wearing a uniform. To what extent do you feel like a student then? To what extent tu retrouves toi dans une mental position que tu peux convince toi-même que, okay, I'm seriously learning something right now. Comme les gars paraissent super stupides, les gars paraissent super basiques, mais moi, j'ai envie de juste prendre ça l'exemple là pour montrer que ça veut dire qu'il va pas redire par cross-curricular linking. OK? Et l'autre, l'exemple de cross-curricular linking, je par exemple, il m'a raconté un topic gender, OK? Equality, feminism, and the likes. Moi-même, qu'à dire que, according to studies, in co-education classes, les filles tout le temps, they are less likely to actually ask questions. OK? It is actually proven by studies que les filles, normalement, dans une classe normale, même physical, because of the fear of being judged by the male counterparts, they don't ask questions. and you're taking that same environment, tu vas prendre dans online platform, à ça, tout va nous devant moi. And the very fact that, like, I'll ask a question, probably women feel even less empowered, hence, to actually, you know, donner une reaction, donner un thumbs up. Tu comprends? Donc, happy some information qui me tient là was for a different topic altogether. Et moi, quand j'ai lo online education, I somehow integrated it. OK? Ce qui m'a dire de ça, c'est que n'importe qui recherche de faire pour essayer, n'importe qui avec un prendre scalaire de GP, none of it will go to waste. OK? N'importe qui piece of knowledge de now, somehow or the other. Donc, vous finissez par cross-curricularly link it to the new essay title qui est now. OK? Donc, I know that this was not supposed to be about cross-curricular linking, but I really hope que vous avez compris qu'il m'a fait dire that you cannot not have an example. Even if an example is not related to the topic, you can make it happen in the topic. Umera, c'est un question que vous là-dessus?
I was just thinking the example you gave of uniforms. Like my brother, his school actually makes him wear his uniform at home. So like
That's
how,
smart.
yeah.
Smart.
Yeah. So like how, not just in terms of like thinking about it, but like it actually happens. Like thinking about it, like we actually make people like implement these policies. So don't think like cross-curricular linking is something like out of this world. It's not. People actually think about those things and actually try to change the way we work, we teach, we learn. It's interesting. Like it's definitely something that's happening.
So, moi actually pensais que it was a very good way of doing a brainstorming for an essay, right? Like, moi pensais que tu as important de dire que essai là, littéralement, tu vas ouvrir le cahier GP que tu prends une leçon par là, ou bien tu as une recherche que tu faire par là, donc tu peux dire, OK, ben, pros of online learning, cons of online learning, et c'est wow, fini.
Yeah.
It's honestly not the way I would encourage you to do your essays. There's so much more layers to writing something, and at the end of the day, make yourselves proud of yourself. Like, I just think of it that way. Donc, I really hope que je peux actually comprendre qui ne veut pas un exemple. Je peux actually comprendre comment on veut faire un brainstorming. Yeah, I can only hope you're actually like getting qui ne veut dire. Donc, peut-être moi, je suis envie que je extende ça trop beaucoup further. Donc, jusqu'à là, si quelqu'un a une clarification par rapport à tout ce qu'il nous dit à cette là, donc, it was 1 hour of just saying a lot of things. But moi, actually, j'ai envie que c'est n'importe qui doute ou n'importe quelle affaire, pas en termes de une question discussion, mais en termes de the process of finding the example and the brainstorming. If anybody has anything, je vais juste donner un petit brief les temps. Just like pop in the chat and do that, please. Because I would really, like, it would really be sad if you go away not taking what you should be taking away. Umera, tu n'as n'importe qui se passe, j'étais encore just like advice.
I think like as concluding statement, I would just say like we need to wrap it back to how we would tackle the essay, because what we've done right now is just brainstorm a lot of ideas. Now we actually need to like narrow it down into an essay. So that would be my thing to next step. But like if people have questions, we really want to like tackle those first, because it's not going to help you if you don't understand what we said.
Yeah.
You don't understand the stuff.
Honestly, like the two n'importe quelque chose par rapport à ce qu'il nous fait causer, pas par rapport à l'idée qu'il nous discutait, mais par rapport à comment on discute cette l'idée là. Donc, pas oublier ça session là par rapport à comment tu trouves l'exemple, comment est-ce qu'il applique pour content point, et comment tu interprètes une question d'une façon que you will never fall short of content points. Il y a aussi que un tout petit peu le cross-curricular linking, comme quoi qui va l'exemple que normalement c'est les autres essais pour les autres topics, donc easily integrated dans la topic qu'ils ont gagné là aussi. Donc, I hope it's not overwhelming. I know it is overwhelming. But exactement, si ça m'intéresse, vous avez envie de nous rédiger une coup, just drop a message very quickly, please.
And just in case, because it might really have been overwhelming, you actually get there. You actually get to the step where you can like think about this like process like we do. It just takes like practice and like knowing how to express yourself. Like it comes with time. Don't be discouraged.
Yeah, it's not like how to start doing it right away. It will come with time. When you get une question, Si quelqu'un n'est pas lire beaucoup d'actualité, est-ce qu'il est toujours capable de trouver l'exemple facilement? Mais envie juste... Ok, t'as envie de répondre avant, Mera?
Yeah, I think what I would say is like it's not just about the news that's on media, it's also about like how you experience the world and how you see things. Like you don't have to read like for example the effect of the stressful effects on the mind of the confinement. You don't actually need to read the news to actually think about this. Like it
Yeah.
happens to you, it happens to everybody. Reading the news will give you exposure, and that's really important. It will make you think about what other people are going through, what the world is going through, what people that you don't know are going through. So it's really important in that sense. It's also important to like read about other people's ideas, but it's not that you won't find examples otherwise. Like Bowen said, like cross-curricular, like you don't have to just focus on the news.
Yeah. Si maintenant pas juste quelque chose là-dedans, au contraire, hier me fait que ça cancelle. Moi, je m'encourage de prendre ce ban appointment de 15 minutes là, because it actually like gives me a lot of clarity as to what is not going good with students. Et de prendre ce ban one-on-one session. Donc, et là, je pourrais se poster comme on peut faire. Donc, prends-les, nous allons causer one-on-one. C'est que maintenant, pas juste ça pour la question, si tu as obligé de l'actualité, to be very honest, if you have a notion of what's happening in the world, you do not need to like always be connected avec BBC, France 24, NDTV, CNN, Fox News, etc. Mais il y a une notion de qui peut arriver autour de toi. Par exemple, il y a même because un topic de pandémie là, comment est-ce que motion quand même est tackle, hein? And for me, alors qu'il ça peut arriver à ce là, c'est pas nécessaire de lire journal. En tout cas, les social media, there's so much that you see, ok? Et c'est là que on va dire que, ok, dans la mesure que le gouvernement, tu ne peux pas faire, il ne peut pas faire. Pour moi, je ne pas si beaucoup en être aware of ce qui est arrivé de I Am Rachna movement. Tu entends parler de ça, on verra. Donc, I think a week ago, Top FM sur licence in suspend pour des jours.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know si Banati revoke the comeback on a decision or not. But in the same week, also, I Am Rachna est arrivé comme quoi une fille à peu près même là avec nous, une famille contre le Premier ministre, etc. And she was jailed. Je ne pas follow qui est arrivé après ça pour donner l'idée intégrale de ce qui était. But je ne pas lire le journal. I saw people sharing those posts on Facebook and I got a notion of what happened. Des même, on a essayé pour écrire le freedom of expression during important times. Je vous servi I Am Rachna. Je vous servi ça comme un exemple. Et moi, l'exemple, comme on a beaucoup quote, would simply come from the fact that it was a very popular post being shared around the island. Yeah, donc, il n'est pas nécessairement que tu peux suivre l'actualité tout le temps. It's about exposure. Tu peux pas, avec Instagram, tu peux suivre D3, moi, non, BBC. And honestly, tu vas faire quand j'assiste devant journal, assiste devant télévision. Just follow those accounts on social media. You'll be good.
Somebody's asking.
Yeah.
Should every example be factual? Yeah. You need to have a balance at least. At the very least, you need to have a balance between factual arguments and something that's more qualitative. So keep that in mind. That being said, not everything needs to be about statistics, which I think is what you mean by factual. You can also give something like for example, if a topic statement is about the negative impact of the confinement on the psychological health of people, you can actually like state out what are the psychological effects, like stress. Just using the same example because it's already in your mind. You can actually use those kind of examples. So it's not exactly statistics, it's more like explaining in greater details your topic statement, your idea.
Je pensais que, like, honestly, like, thank you for like asking that question. C'est qu'on veut clarifier, c'est que l'exemple, moi, je vais dire factuel, comme on verra, je ne dis pas comment dire statistique, etc. But even if it's an opinion, even if it's a philosophy, quote the source.
Yeah.
It puts so much more into credibility. It puts so much more conviction into what you're saying. Par exemple, je me rappelle, moi, je fais cause de cultural identity in the versus globalization. Mon premier paragraphe, c'est pas de philosophie. Je feel very okay quoting Rumi quoting Lao Tzu, quoting peut-être the Bible. What I'm saying is that factual doesn't mean that it has to be numbers. It doesn't mean that it has to like, it cannot not be an opinion. Peut-être mon envie quote, par exemple, il est super simple, Michelle Obama, il fera dire que j'ai fait une adresse to girls, okay? As to what like, pas cause un garçon de pro de l'éducation. And it's her opinion. You may not think qu'il m'a mis un essai, but if that opinion peut help moi dans mon essai, it's not a piece of fact. It's her opinion. But I can quote it and write, said Michelle Obama. Donc, yeah, not every example has to be factual that way.
Somebody sent me a personal question. Sometimes vocabulary don't come in and we need to figure out on the spot. So what do I suggest?
Something what?
Like for me personally, vocabulary. So vocabulary doesn't come instantly. So you need to actually figure it out on the spot. So personally, I don't force vocabulary into my writing. I mean, the words come. I know I have some, for example, I want to talk about somebody discussing something, and I know that the person had personal feelings in it. I'm not going to say just discuss. I'm going to put an adverb on it, or I'm going to use a verb that's more like strong. That's how I actually like use vocabulary. I don't have vocabulary in mind and then I try to put it in there. I know what I want to say and I try to find the best words to say. That's what I do.
If I can probably like add and help out, I know for a fact that for a lot of people, the vocabulary doesn't come naturally. C'est pas comme un trouble that you only have now, everybody has it. Okay? Des fois, tu peux pas que c'est quand je vous dis que moi, ça va pas pour venir. C'est que je trouve super encouragée pour faire et que me connais paraît de mécanique extrêmement technique. But at the end of the day, language is pure maths. Like, c'est un système de comment tu arranges un mot. C'est un linguistique, c'est un sémantique, c'est un pieces of phrases, c'est un sémantique. Moi, ce que je peux encourager pour faire, c'est que si tu regardes un petit cahier, donnez-moi un petit cahier 20 pages par année, moi. Pour un mot essentiel que je connais, que tu amènes again, tu pourrais servir dans un GPSC. Par exemple, miscellaneous. Road analyse un synonyme que je pensais pour confortable pour servir. Peut-être il est capable plethora, il est capable paraphernalia, il est capable. En même temps, pas oublier qu'ils ont appelé un mot trop casual aussi. Parce qu'en fait, j'ai envie qu'on m'a déjà élevé de maturity of language un peu, en termes de moyens, par exemple, plus sophistiqué, qui appelle plus less than spoken English, it's more like written English. Donc, moi, je suis super encouragée de faire un petit cahier pour bande des trois mots essentiels, finir à l'autre finir un synonyme et de finir godly. En même temps, hier, au contraire, moi, je fais une discussion avec un élève et je me dis, moi, comment on fait le vocabulaire? Honestly, if you have to learn certain phrases by heart, or a list of phrases by heart, just do it. Si vous me demandez, par exemple, eventually, formally, lastly, thereafter, moreover, furthermore, very cliché little things. Just make a list of it, keep it handy. Si vous êtes capable d'apprendre les trois affaires par cœur pour un grand sujet comme sociologie, economics, business studies, just do it for GP as well. Like, if it can help, definitely do it.
Yeah, technical vocabulary you definitely will have to learn, like if not by heart, but like by repetition. So like just constantly like saying those words, you'll have to learn them. Like, I mean, just a simple example, genetic engineering. Not everybody knows what genetic even means, but like you need to understand those words. You need to have that technical vocabulary when you're talking about technology, when you're talking specifically about technology right now. So learn your technical vocabulary.
Yeah. Même un truc comme, en plus, moi, je pensais que les super important qu'ils aient une façon de développer le vocabulaire aussi. Il y a un topic qui est un mot super cliché, une phrase super cliché, une sentence cliché. Par exemple, religion is the opium of people. OK? C'est une phrase qui, so many people know about it. It was spoken by Karl Marx, dans la sociologie, tu obligé de connaître cette sentence comme vous dites ça là. Donc, il y a une petite phrase par rapport à un topic. So you actually enlist it, because then when you're writing as well, you don't even have to think, it just comes to you very naturally. Okay? Moi, je me une petite phrase comme gender is not two ends of a line, it's actually a whole spectrum. Donc, la phrase en lui-même, il peut rejoindre comment dire que tu peux être male and female, tu es actually like a whole spectrum of genders. Donc, des fois, c'est pas l'idée que tu es non, mais le fait que moi, j'ai gardé comme une petite phrase qui m'a appris juste comme ça, ben, quand tu peux essayer de mettre un topic qui disait la phrase là, ben, il est juste comme naturel. Et c'est une phrase qui m'a inventé, like, 4 ans, 5 ans, là, mon corps appelle jusqu'à aujourd'hui. Donc, moi, je peux encourager de garder un petit cahier que tu peux écrire des affaires déjà, quand tu finis d'écrire, et you just learn it, and you just pick and plug, like, literally. Yep, me viens aucun les messages de personnes, donc je pensais que that's about it en termes de clarification qui étaient super rodés. Mais quelqu'un a vraiment un essai title actually, Why Preserve Marriage in the Ever-Changing World. Peut-être sans nous brainstorm, mais peut-être just to mention the actionic content word, peut-être. Juste avoir lu to everyone. Yeah, why preserve marriage in the ever-changing world? Donc, content word, c'est the preservation of marriage in an ever-changing world. Et action word is actually why. Donc, libéraux de raisonnement de cette part. Donc, the actually, vous avez une justification as to why you should continue, you know, like preserving the institution called marriage dans les mondes qui dynamiques. OK? Donc, on pensait, avec bien vous comprendre, c'est que the word preserve itself means that should we continue it or should we abolish it? Donc, vous avez fait un choix, c'était là l'autre. Comment je vais définir marriage pour donner dans le content word? Est-ce que vous êtes un élève qui définit marriage as just between two sexes? Are you the student who chooses to see it as any spectrum of gender? In an ever-changing world, dans quelle façon vous devez prendre ça ever-changing world? Dans quel aspect? Avec pas oublier the why is vous êtes justifié cette affaire-là. Donc, yes. Vous pensez que in its entirety, that's about it. Peut-être faire un petit résumé.
I got another question. I'll just go like same, just briefly on it, like identifying the main parts of it.
Yeah.
Violence continues to increase in our society, and the government is to be blamed. How far do you agree? So whenever you have questions where there's like two parts of it, so there's a first statement and then there's a second statement, you need to make sure that you understand the combination of those. And just to make sure like you identify what combination you need to talk about in this essay, and what does it mean to actually like think about the other combinations. Even if you just put like one sentence about like the other combinations, but like think about it, like try to think about it. So here, it's a given that violence continues to increase in our society. So here, the question says like, okay, this is happening, and who is to blame? So that's already a bias on the question side. So it's saying like one thing that I know on this is like, if you look at the world history, violence actually right now is at the lowest compared to like previous civilizations. Like there was so much more violence back then. So that's a way of like putting just one sentence of saying the question is biased in a way, but like don't do it like that. Just be more diplomatic about it, but say like even though in world history violence is actually at its lowest, right now when you look at the current society, we actually see like in some communities violence is on the increase, and who is to blame for that? So think about it in that sense. And the action word is how far do you agree? So you need to have like an opinion. You need to have your stance on this.
I think ce qui est intéressant avec action word de how far do you agree, c'est qu'il te donne un absolute yes or no. To actually kind of position yourself in the gray. Et ça qui est super intéressant. And I think a lot of students actually go for these questions parce qu'ils permettent pour pas qu'à point absolute yes or no. But yeah. Ce qui est super intéressant avec cette question-là, c'est que comme on verra, dire qu'il y en a des parties. Et je trouve super intéressant qu'il mentionne que actually violence is not increasing. It's actually reached a stagnation point. Et que déjà une question, of course, c'est que who is at blame to it? Alors qu'il nous pensait que le gouvernement is at blame, peut-être the very fact that we have a government is solving the problem. Imagine if we didn't have any government. Donc, si ça aide un peu dans ce brainstorming, I hope it helps. Ce que j'ai envie de finir par dire, c'est que je vais prendre un assignment numéro 3. Il y a 3 questions dans l'assignment là pour qu'ils soient capables, comment dire, attendre par ça nous, mais si on your own, tu as envie de faire n'importe qui, une question de nous trouver, ou bien pas du moment, avec attendre une question, feel free to do that. Any other thoughts, Omera?
Yeah, just to tie back to how you actually narrow down now. After brainstorming, you need to define the scope of what you're going to write about. So if you brainstormed a lot and you got like this much ideas and you need to write an essay like this, it's going to take some like maturity on your part. Like, what are the strong thoughts that you had on this? What are the strong arguments? What things can you like just mention very briefly or not at all? Like try to narrow it down, and you'll notice that if you had a lot of ideas and you actually narrow it down in a really good way, even though you write little, the examiner will know, okay, that person knows her stuff, that person knows what she's talking about. And that's going to come off good for you. So don't just dismiss the process of thinking big. It can actually really play in your favor.
Yep, all good. Donc, j'espère que the session helped en termes de retrouver perspective, de comment exactement je reprends l'exemple, comment est-ce que twister une question sur l'interprétation pour vous plus beaucoup d'exemples, plus beaucoup content point, et comment est-ce que c'est les cross-curricular linking, dans les autres topics, pour vous intégrer dans le topic qui se peut écrire. Donc, yeah. Donc, si personne n'a aucune question, donc, bye, nous retrouvons à la prochaine. Après tout, vous pouvez upload sa vidéo à YouTube, vous avez ce link-là. I hope that it helps et que vous pouvez revisiter ce bizarre ou qu'ils aient prendre un point là où discuter. Ce qui me hope is a highlight, c'est que comment est-ce capable de depuis just another common examples, the normal thought-able examples, pour que vous ayez un exemple plus sophistiqué, en utilisant ban means de nous montrer comment on peut prendre un simple headlines and turn it to an entire paragraph in itself. Donc aussi, ce qui est super important pour highlight, c'est que je ne vais pas juste mentionner une affaire, je vais dire quote, from where did you take it, credibilize the source, the fact, comme on l'a appelé. Fact pas veut dire statistique ou bien pieces of universal truths. Il y a aussi quand même le plus mal du monde qui se fait juste quote. Donc, yeah. Hope it helps. Donc, see you soon. Bye. Merci, Omera.
Yeah.